Yorana Fahotato. Hello to all of us. This is a story tonight. This story, I'm telling a series of stories about Mangarevan. And this is one of the, so that people will know about their history and stuff. And this is a legend, a story from Mangarevan. About 700 years ago, there was this man who came to Mangarevan. His name was Taratahi. And he came with his men. And they lived in Mangarevan. And the problem with Taratahi is he was very pushy, obnoxious. He'd force people. And the people of Mangarevan got mad at him. And they kicked him out. And so he left Mangarevan with his men. And they went to this place called Mata-Kite-Ragi. And the name of Mata-Kite-Ragi today is Pitcairn's Island, which is about 700 miles east of Mangarevan. They went to Mata-Kite-Ragi. But the son of Taratahi stayed in Mangarevan. His name was Anua-Motua. And Motua means like the ancestor. Because he had a lot of children and they married into chiefs. And they were like the junior and the senior royal line was descended from him. And Anua-Motua, he had 4 wives. And the first wife, it said that Kafanawi Tama Maitapunga Veri Veri. She gave birth to children like spiders. In other words, the spiders got lots of babies. She had 22 kids. They're named Ingaya Puninga Marokura Hoi Purere. Ipo Anua-Nui Manongi Ruanga Pitorenga Katiora. Toa Rueroi, Toa Tairiki, Toa Kapua Marokura. Kirikiri Tangihia. Maro te ipo, then Rerekoia, Arimatu o Anua, Anua Ite, Tope, and Taroi. That's 22 kids. And then the second wife, her name was Toa Tua Matakota. And she had a son named Matangi Hakaparo. And he married a woman, and they had a son named Rikitea. And that's the name, the main town in Mangarevan is Rikitea. And that's where that name came from that son, from that grandson of Anua-Motua. The third wife, Toa Tumatakawa, she had a son named Nomati. And Nomati had mana, had this special mana, power like magic, and he could stop the rain. And the ancient people said it was good that he did not have children, because if he did, then the land would have been totally barren, because there would have been no rain. And the fourth wife, she had a son named Tiangiangi. And Tiangiangi was the last child. And he was like the little child in the family. Tiangiangi had mana. He had this magic power. He could talk to the gods. And he married a woman, Toa Reapakaha. And they lived in a place called, he was born in Ngatavak in a place called Aurangi. And later on he moved up near the mountain. And one day, he got married and he had 3 kids. He had a son named Timangitu Tavake. Remember that name, it's going to come in later. Had a daughter named Kohehune and another daughter named Tafito. And one day Tiangiangi was sitting by his house. And he just like sitting there with his head in his hands, and he had a vision. And in his vision he saw his grandfather, Taratahi, in the land of Mata-Kite-Ragi. And his people, the people of Taratahi, they were the Meiriri people. They were so mad at him that they were tearing up all the breadfruit trees. And so Tiangiangi told his brothers and sisters, they had to prepare a journey to go to Mata-Kite-Ragi to help their grandfather. And so they all made their preparations, and then they sailed away. They sailed to Mata-Kite-Ragi. And this is like an illustration of the mana of Tiangiangi. Tiangiangi had this thing called a po'eo, which is a gong. It's like you tap it or you hit it, it's like a drum or carved out of wood or something like that. And he had forgotten it in Mangarevan. And they went out, they're sailing away, and he forgot his po'eo. And what happened then was he told his nephew, Rikitea, that he'd forgotten his po'eo. And then what happened is the front of the canoe was covered with this black cloud. Right? And then they heard the sound of the gong from inside that black cloud. And Tiangiangi came out of that cloud, and he'd gotten his gong. His spirit had gone back to Mangarevan, found the thing he'd forgotten, the po'eo, and he brought it back to the canoe. Okay? Now, when they were sailing, their father, Anua-Motua, had come, and he told the son number 2 and the son number 3, Puninga and Mata-Kite-Ragi, two of his almost the oldest sons, he had them directing the canoe, navigating the canoe. And they slept, there was a house on the canoe, and they slept in that house with their kids. Tiangiangi, since he was like the littlest son in the family, he slept in the body of the canoe. And one morning he stuck his head out to look at the sea, and he went and woke up his father. And his father, Anua-Motua, looked out, and the wind was cold, the sea was cold. And the father knew that they were sailing in the wrong direction. And he told his 2 sons, Puning and Mata-Kite-Ragi, we have sailed into a taikoko, into a cold ocean. He knew that they'd mistaken their journey. They'd gone down too far south. And he told his 2 sons, Puning and Mata-Kite-Ragi, they had to let Tiangiangi direct the canoe, be the navigator. So Tiangiangi, he started navigating the canoe, and he returned the canoe back up into the warmer seas, and then onto the path to Mata-Kite-Ragi, and they continued on their journey. And they came to an island, and on that island, they could see the island. They didn't stop there. There was nobody there, and Anua-Motua, the father, said, "Well, if there's nobody there, there's no food." So they continued on. They came to a second island, and it was the same again. Nobody was living there, and Anua-Motua said, "Let's not stop. There's no food here." They came to a third island, and they stopped on that island. But there was nobody there, and there wasn't any food. And the next morning, when they got to that island, Anua-Motua, he told one of his daughters, her name was Pitcairn, he said, "This land is yours. It belongs to you and your descendants." And the next morning he said to his daughter, "But there's no food here." And she said, "There is food here. There's food that comes from the horizon." And what she meant is that around the island there was lots and lots of fish. Okay, so that island was given to Pitcairn. And then they continued on their journey, and they got to Mata-Kite-Ragi. When they got to Mata-Kite-Ragi, there wasn't a good place to park their canoe, to beach their canoe. And Tiangiangi himself, he went alone by himself up onto the shore. And he left his family, his brothers and sisters, and his dad in the canoe. And he went up onto the shore, and he was looking for his grandfather, Taratahi. And he saw his grandfather, found his grandfather in this little valley there was a river there, but it was a dry river. And he talked to his grandfather. And this is the same thing. Itena pokiangi, kia te uteito, te kawana te tupapaku ki te tangata. In those times, the ancient people said that the spirits talked with men. And I think what that means is that the grandfather Taratahi was dead. Tiangiangi was talking to the spirit of his grandfather. And Tiangiangi said, I need some breadfruit. And the grandfather said, "There is no breadfruit, it's all been torn up. But if you want breadfruit, there's a breadfruit tree and a banana tree growing in your ear." And so Tiangiangi pulled them out, the banana tree and the breadfruit tree, and he planted them, and they started to grow. And the whole time his family relations are still in the sea and the canoe. And they started to grow. And the breadfruit tree, there was it's a male flower. And Tiangiangi, he saw this male flower began to grow, and he called to his father on the canoe, to Anua-Motua, and he says, "I see a male flower growing on the breadfruit tree." And his father called back to him and said, "That male flower belongs to your older brother Ingaya." Ingaya was the firstborn son. Now, you can't eat a male flower. A living person isn't going to eat it. It's thought that Ingaya was already dead, and this was the food that was given to this dead brother. And then a little while later, a breadfruit grew, but it was real small. And Tiangiangi called to his father, there's a small breadfruit growing. And Anua-Motua said, that breadfruit is yours. And then later on, there's a breadfruit that grew as a big one. And Tiangiangi called to his father, here's a big breadfruit. And his father said, that one goes to your two older brothers, Puninga and Marukuda. Those two older brothers, they always get the good stuff. They sit in the canoe in the best place. Tiangiangi sleeps in the bottom of the canoe. There's a big breadfruit, they get it, because they were the oldest sons. And Tiangiangi was the youngest son. He always got the bad stuff. And after this had happened, then the family, the brothers and sisters and the mom, the father, the family of Tiangiangi, they went up under the land. And they lived there in Mata-Kite-Ragi. And in time, their father, Anua-Motua, he died. And the problem they had was they did not know the right rituals to do when somebody died. And there were 6 chiefs in Hawaii who had heard that Anua-Motua had died, and they came to Mangarevan, and their names were Puna Hoke, Ngututotohe, Orokio, Unuiti, and Apeeke. And these 6 chiefs, they came and they taught the family of Anua-Motua how the rituals for the death of their father. And so then from then on, the people of Mangarevan, they knew the rituals. And there's the 2 daughters, Manongia-Ruanga, and they kind of directed the rituals. And then those chiefs went back to Hawaii. And these children, what they did is they dried their father's body and they put it on a raft. And they pushed the raft out into the sea. And the next day, the raft came back to the land. So they pushed it out again. And the next day, it came back to land. And this happened several times. The body kept coming back. And Tiangiangi understood what this meant, that their father still had some last words. And so the next time the body came back, Tiangiangi asked his father's dead body, he said, Anua-Motua, oh Anua-Motua, for who is the land of Mata-Kite-Ragi? Because the father wanted to distribute the lands to his different children. Tiangiangi asked him, to who belongs the land of Mata-Kite-Ragi? And the dead body said, Puninga, it belongs to Puninga and Marukuda. And Tiangiangi calls to his family, his older brothers and sisters, and he says, from now on, forever, the land of Mata-Kite-Ragi belongs to Puninga and Marukuda. And he asked his dead father's body, is there any land for my Timangi? Because the firstborn son, the son of Tiangiangi, was Timangi Tutavake. And Tiangiangi wants his son to get some land, to have something for himself. And the father didn't answer. And then the next question is, to who belongs, Tiangiangi asked his father, to who belongs Natavake, which is a district in Mangarevan? And the body said, the district of Natavake belongs to Hoi. And so Tiangiangi calls his brothers and sisters, the district of Natavake belongs to Hoi forever, from now on and forever. And he asked his father again, isn't there anything for my Timangi? And there was no answer. There was not. And so there were 10 lands that were distributed. Anua-Motua, or his body, distributed 10 lands to different children of his. And at each instance, Tiangiangi asked his father, what about my Timangi? And there was no land for Timangi, Tutavake, for Tiangiangi and his children. And so then after this, they pushed the body out, they pushed the raft out to sea with the body on it, and it did not return. I think they did that because their idea was that Hawaii was a land under the sea, and so that if you push the body out, the raft will eventually tip over, the body will get down to Hawaii, in the bottom of the sea. So, but those lands were distributed by Anua-Motua. And most of the children of Anua-Motua, they went back to Mangarevan to live. But Puninga and Marukura, the two oldest living sons, they stayed in Mata-Kite-Ragi because that was their land. Oh, yeah. Just at the very, very end, when they pushed the body off, the body told Agiagi that his would be the land of Momona, that his land would be Momona-Mua. Now, Momona-Mua is not a land that is known. It wasn't, at that time, it was an undiscovered land. Nobody had ever found it yet. And that was the land that was going to be given to Agiagi. And they pushed out the raft, and the body did not return. And Agiagi could see a vision. He could see way off in the distance, way out there in the horizon. He could see his father, Anua-Motua, with his digging stick. And he was digging, and he was getting dirt from the bottom of the sea, and he was piling it up to make the land of Momona-Mua. And all that Agiagi had to do was to voyage and find that island, and then that would be his inheritance. And then the children of Anua-Motua, they went back to Mangarevan. But Puninga and Marukura stayed on Mata-Kite-Ragi, and Agiagi stayed with his two older brothers. And they lived there on Mangarevan. But one day, Agiagi came to his two older brothers and he said, I would like you to give me a canoe and some men. I want to go to the land of Momona-Mua. And he said to them, the reason is because I fear the shadow of your digging sticks. And what he meant was that he did not want to be a little chief on the island. They were the two big chiefs, and he was a little chief. He did not want to be a little chief. He wanted to find his own island where he would be the big chief, where he could reign and have authority. And his brothers gave him a canoe and men, and he sailed off. And he sailed away to go find the land of Momona-Mua. And in their stories, they say that he found the land of Momona-Mua. And they also add that their father, Anua-Motua, when he got to Hawaii, to the night world, he married a woman there, and they had a child. And that this brother, this son, in the night world, he joined Agiagi on Momona-Mua. So Agiagi and his brother from the night world lived in Momona-Mua. And that's the story. Now, there's one thing here in this story, and this is the sad part. When they were journeying to Mata-Kite-Ragi, they went too far south and it was cold. So they knew that was the wrong direction. So it might be reasonable to assume that when Agiagi went to look for Momona-Mua, he sailed north. Well, north of Mangarevan and Mata-Kite-Ragi, there isn't any island. And so I fear that what Agiagi did was he sailed off into a part of the ocean looking for new lands, and where he was sailing, there were no lands. Okay, Polynesia Mangarevan is way out in the eastern part of Polynesia. It's almost at the end of the islands. And when he sailed out, he was sailing out into some big empty sea with no land on it. And so I think that maybe what happened with Agiagi in his journey, he ran out of water, ran out of food, and him and his men, they died of thirst on the sea. And the old-time voyagers, that was their danger. And I think that happened at the Agiagi. And I guess maybe when we die, we can go find him in Hawaii and ask him what happened. Because I don't know. We'll hope he parao.